hospital room, which should have been filled with joy, instead held an air of unease. Clara walked in, eager to meet her new granddaughter and celebrate her daughter, Hannah, becoming a mother for the first time. However, as soon as she stepped inside, Hannah discreetly handed her a crumpled piece of paper. Help me! They're going to kill me!" Clara's heart froze, and the paper trembled in her hands. She instinctively tucked it into her pocket, masking her shock with a forced smile. Her eyes darted toward the other side of the room, where Mark, her son-in-law, held the baby. Next to him, Eleanor, his mother, sat still, her gaze cold and calculating. Their calm, detached demeanor sent shivers down Clara's spine. "What does this mean?" Clara wondered, her mind racing as she replayed the note's chilling words. But with Mark and Eleanor watching her every move, she knew she couldn't react just yet. Clara resolved to stay calm and figure out what was happening before making her next move. Her instincts told her this wasn't just paranoia. Her daughter was in real danger. As Clara looked at Hannah, she saw fear in her eyes masked by a weak, hesitant smile. The tension was palpable. Clara squeezed her daughter's hand gently, a silent promise that she wouldn't let anything happen to her. Clara sat in her car outside the hospital, clutching the note. Her thoughts drifted to the past, trying to piece together how things had gone so terribly wrong. Hannah had always been her pride and joy, a bright, kind, and ambitious young woman. Clara remembered the day Hannah introduced Mark to the family. Mark, a successful accountant, was polite and soft-spoken. His calm demeanor immediately won Clara and her husband over. "He treats me like a queen, Mom," Hannah had gushed, her cheeks flushed with happiness. Clara had felt relieved knowing her daughter would be marrying someone who seemed so kind and dependable. Mark's father had passed away when he was young, and his mother, Eleanor, had taken on the role of both parent and provider for her 3 sons. Though Eleanor was firm and slightly overbearing, Clara saw it as the result of years of hardship and responsibility. The wedding had been a joyous occasion, with Eleanor delivering a heartfelt speech, welcoming Hannah into the family. "You're not just my daughter-in-law, you're like the daughter I never had," Eleanor had said, tears shining in her eyes. Clara had felt reassured, believing that Hannah would be treated with love and care in her new home. The months following the wedding seemed blissful. Hannah often called Clara, her voice brimming with excitement as she shared stories about her new life with Mark, but those happy calls gradually became less frequent. It was subtle at first. Hannah's voice lost its usual spark, and her laughter became rare. Clara thought perhaps it was the fatigue of adjusting to married life, but her instincts told her something was amiss. One day, after weeks of avoiding her mother's questions, Hannah finally broke down during lunch. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched her coffee cup with trembling hands. "Mom, I don't think I can have children," Hannah whispered, her voice barely audible. Clara's heart ached seeing her daughter in such pain. She reached across the table, holding Hannah's hand tightly. "Take your time," Clara said gently. "There's no rush. Just take things one step at a time." Hannah gave a faint smile, her tears momentarily easing. But Clara sensed the weight of her daughter's unspoken fears. Clara's worries deepened when Hannah called her late one night, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mom, she keeps saying I'm useless, that I'm not trying hard enough," Clara cried. Clara didn't need to ask who she was. Eleanor's sharp tongue was already becoming a problem. And then came the breaking point. Mark said, "If I can't give him children, there's no point in staying married." Those words shattered Hannah's belief that Mark loved her unconditionally. Clara felt her chest tighten with anger, but all she could do was comfort her daughter over the phone, whispering, "You're enough, Hannah, just as you are." Weeks later, just as Clara began considering stepping in, she received unexpected news from Hannah. "Mom, I'm pregnant." The joy in Hannah's voice was infectious. Clara felt a wave of relief, believing the pregnancy might heal the cracks in her daughter's marriage. But when she visited their home to celebrate, she found an unsettling scene. Eleanor sat stiffly on the sofa, barely acknowledging Clara's arrival. "It took you long enough to get pregnant," Eleanor said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Mark, buried in his work, didn't even look up to greet her. Clara left that day with a heavy heart, but she couldn't have imagined the horrors that were still to come. Clara clutched the note tighter as she stood outside Hannah's hospital room. The words, "Mom, help me, they're going to kill me," echoed in her mind like a haunting refrain. With Mark and Eleanor still inside, Clara knew she had to tread carefully. She offered Hannah a reassuring glance before leaving the hospital, vowing to uncover the truth. Days later, Clara met Hannah at her home, under the pretense of helping her prepare for the baby's arrival. With Eleanor and Mark out for the day, Hannah finally revealed the full extent of her nightmare. "It all started a few weeks ago," Hannah began, her voice trembling. "I overheard a conversation between Mark and his mom. At first I thought I misheard, but then I realized what they were planning." She reached for her phone and played an audio recording. Clara's blood ran cold as she heard Eleanor's voice, sharp and unapologetic. "Once the baby's born, we'll get rid of her. The insurance money will be enough to start over." Mark's response was equally chilling. "If we time it right, no one will suspect a thing. It's killing two birds with one stone." Clara's hands shook as the recording ended. What are they talking about? Insurance money?" Hannah nodded, pulling open a drawer and showing Clara a stack of papers. There were life insurance policies in Hannah's name, signed during her pregnancy. "Mom, I never agreed to these," she whispered, pointing to the forged signatures. As Clara examined the documents, the pieces began to fall into place. Mark and Eleanor had taken out several life insurance policies worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The premiums were paid with meticulous precision, ensuring no red flags were raised. "They've been planning this for months," Hannah said, tears streaming down her face. "They're waiting for me to give birth so they can—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Clara wrapped her arms around her daughter, her mind racing. She knew they couldn't go to the police just yet, not without solid evidence beyond the recording and insurance policies. "We'll figure this out," Clara whispered. "But for now, I want you and the baby to stay with me once you're discharged." 2 weeks later, Clara received an unexpected call from Mark. "We're hosting a celebration dinner for the baby. It's family tradition. Bring some money as a gift for the occasion." Clara knew this was her opportunity. She agreed to attend, but she wasn't going empty-handed. Clara spent the following days meticulously preparing. She ensured the recording was backed up on multiple devices and hired a private investigator to gather further evidence. The day of the dinner arrived, and Clara found herself standing in front of Mark and Eleanor's home, clutching a small gift bag containing a recorder and additional copies of the insurance policies. She rang the doorbell, her heart pounding. Eleanor answered, her expression cold. "You're late," she snapped, stepping aside to let Clara in. Mark was seated on the sofa, looking as smug as ever. "When are you sending Hannah back? There's too much work piling up around here," he said without so much as a greeting. Clara suppressed her rage and set the gift bag on the table. She took a deep breath, her voice steady but firm. "I brought something I think you'll find interesting." Mark raised an eyebrow as Clara pulled out her phone and pressed play. The room filled with the sound of their recorded conversation. Eleanor's face twisted in anger. "What is this nonsense?" she snapped. Mark laughed nervously. "It's a joke. We were just venting." Clara didn't flinch. "A joke," she said, pulling the forged insurance documents from her bag. "And these? Care to explain how my daughter's signature ended up on these without her knowledge?" Eleanor's composure cracked and her voice turned shrill. "We didn't mean it, seriously. You have no proof that we would actually go through with it." Clara walked to the living room sideboard, pulling open a drawer where Hannah had discovered the forged policies. "Oh, I think the evidence speaks for itself." Realizing the walls were closing in, Eleanor turned on Mark. "This was all your idea," she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at her son. Mark, desperate, shot back, Don't blame this all on me. You wanted that baby more than anything." Their shouting match was interrupted by the sound of police sirens in the distance. Clara smirked. "It looks like your ride is here." As officers entered the home, Mark and Eleanor pleaded for mercy. "We didn't actually do anything," Mark cried. Clara's voice was calm but icy. "Planning a crime is still a crime, and for what you've put my daughter through, I have no mercy to spare." Mark and Eleanor were handcuffed and led out the door, their protests falling on deaf ears. Clara exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of weeks of anxiety finally lift. The house was silent now, save for the faint ticking of a wall clock. Mark and Eleanor had been taken away, but the enormity of what had just transpired lingered in the air. Clara sat on the sofa, her hands still trembling slightly. She thought of Hannah and the baby, safe and unaware of the chaos that had unfolded. It wasn't over yet. There was more to uncover. Clara decided she wouldn't rest until every piece of the sinister plot was brought to light. The following days were a whirlwind of police interviews, legal proceedings, and media scrutiny. The evidence Clara had collected, the recordings, the insurance documents, and the testimony from Hannah, painted a damning picture of Mark and Eleanor's intentions. Hannah, though shaken, found strength in the support of her mother. She had moved back into Clara's home with her newborn daughter, Emma, and slowly began to rebuild her life. Clara remembered the last conversation she had with Mark before his arrest. "Why?" she had asked him, her voice low but steady. Mark had scoffed, his arrogance intact even in defeat. "You wouldn't understand. It was about securing a future." "For yourself," Clara had replied coldly. "Not for Hannah, not for Emma." The trial came quickly, and the courtroom was filled with reporters eager to document the shocking case. Eleanor's face was pale, her once confident demeanor replaced by visible panic. She clung to the hope that her reputation as a dutiful mother would shield her from the worst. Mark, on the other hand, sat with an air of indifference, though his occasional glances toward the jury betrayed his unease. The prosecutor presented the evidence with clinical precision. Lupin, the according of Eleanor and Mark planning Hannah's murder, the forged insurance policies, the private investigator's findings of additional financial irregularities linked to Eleanor. Each piece of evidence drove the point home. This wasn't an impulsive act of desperation. It was premeditated. When Hannah took the stand, her voice trembled, but her words were clear. She described months of emotional abuse, Eleanor's relentless pressure, and Mark's indifference. When she recounted the moment she discovered the recording and realized her life was in danger, the courtroom was silent. "I trusted them," Hannah said, her voice breaking. "I believed Mark loved me, but to them I was just a means to an end." Clara watched her daughter with pride, her heart aching for the pain Hannah had endured, but swelling with admiration for her courage. The jury's verdict was swift. Both Mark and Eleanor were found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and forgery. Mark received a 10-year prison sentence, while Eleanor was sentenced to 15 years due to her central role in the scheme. Their downfall was complete. Mark's employer terminated him, and Eleanor's social circle abandoned her. The once proud woman, who had dominated every room she entered, was now a pariah. For Clara and Hannah, the verdict brought a sense of closure. They knew the scars of the ordeal would take time to heal, but they also knew they had survived something extraordinary. Back at home, Clara held Emma in her arms, marveling at the tiny life that had endured so much even before taking her first breath. "You're safe now," she whispered, kissing Emma's forehead. Hannah sat beside her, a quiet strength radiating from her. "Mom," she said softly, "I don't know how I'll ever thank you." Clara smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. "You don't have to. That's what family is for." Months had passed since the trial, and life for Clara, Hannah, and baby Emma had settled into a peaceful routine. The shadows cast by Mark and Eleanor's betrayal were slowly fading, replaced by the warmth of a new beginning. Hannah had finalized her divorce from Mark, who was ordered to pay $150,000 in alimony and child support. The Though his financial situation was bleak, the court ensured that Hannah and Emma's future would be secure. Eleanor, now imprisoned, had been disowned by her remaining family and ostracized by her former social circle. The woman who once wielded control over everyone around her now lived in isolation, paying the price for her twisted dreams. Mark, stripped of his career and reputation, struggled to rebuild his life. He found work as a day laborer, spending long hours to make ends meet. Most of his income went to Hannah and Emma, leaving him and Eleanor to live in near poverty. For Clara, hearing of their fate brought little satisfaction. Instead, she felt a profound relief that her daughter was free from their clutches. At home, Hannah flourished. Moving back in with Clara gave her the time and space to heal. With Emma in her arms, she began to rediscover the joy and purpose that Mark and Eleanor had tried to steal from her. Clara, watching her daughter's strength and resilience, felt immense pride. One afternoon, Clara sat on the porch with Emma nestled in her lap. The baby's tiny fingers wrapped around her grandmother's hand, and Clara marveled at the innocence and potential of this new life. Every day with her feels like a gift, Clara thought, her heart swelling with gratitude. Hannah joined her on the porch, carrying 2 cups of tea. "She's grown so much already," Hannah said, smiling as she watched Emma giggle. Clara nodded. "She's a reminder of how far we've come. No matter what we went through, we're stronger now because of it." As the sun set, casting warm golden light across the yard, Clara reflected on the lessons she'd learned. Family wasn't just about blood. It was about protecting, supporting, and loving one another, even in the face of darkness. Clara promised herself to cherish these peaceful moments, to savor the laughter and the light that Emma and Hannah brought into her life. For the first time in months, she felt truly at ease.